It's the morning of June 7th, 1992, a Sunday, a quiet street in Springfield, Missouri, a small house with a front door hanging open. Inside, everything is exactly as it should be. Purses on the counter, car keys on the hook, cigarettes by the ashtray, and a little dog named Cinnamon wandering through the rooms, confused, looking for someone to feed her. But the women who live here and the friend who was staying the night are gone. No note, no sign of a fight, no broken windows, no blood, just gone. Like they stepped through a hole in the world sometime before sunrise and the world simply closed up behind them. And here's what makes this case different from most disappearances. This wasn't one person slipping quietly out of their life. This was three people, a mother and her teenage daughter and their best friend, taken from the same place at the same time without a single neighbor hearing a thing, without the dog barking, without a single overturned chair. Three people and not one trace left behind to explain where they went. 33 years later, the case is still open. No arrests, no confirmed suspects, no bodies, no answers. Just a family dog that has been gone for decades now too. And three faces frozen in photographs from 1992 that still hang in the windows of a few Springfield storefronts. This is the story of Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall. This is the story of the Springfield Three. To understand what happened, you have to start the night before, June 6th, 1992, a Saturday, graduation day. Susie Streeter and Stacy McCall had been best friends for years. Susie was 19 and Stacy was 18. Both of them graduated from Kickapoo High School in Springfield that afternoon, walking across a stage in front of their families full of everything that the beginning of the rest of your life is supposed to feel like. They had every reason to celebrate, and they did. That evening, the two of them went out to graduation parties around the city. They laughed, they took pictures, they made plans for the next morning. They were supposed to drive down to Branson to spend the day at a water park called Whitewater. It was going to be a perfect summer Sunday. Around 10:30 that night, Stacy called her mother, Janice, to check in. She sounded fine, happy. She told her mom she was thinking about staying the night at a friend's house, a house that was full of other graduates celebrating. But that house was loud and crowded, and at some point Stacy and Susie decided they'd rather go somewhere quieter. So they drove to Susie's house, the house Susie shared with her mother, Cheryl. At approximately 2:15 in the morning, Stacy and Susie were last seen leaving a graduation party and heading to that address, 1717 East Delmar Street. The plan was simple: go home, get some sleep, drive to Branson in the morning. Cheryl Levitt was already home. She was 47 years old, a cosmetologist, a woman described by everyone who knew her as warm and full of life. She had spoken on the phone with a friend around 11:15 that night, a relaxed, ordinary call about painting a chest of drawers, and had gone to bed at a normal hour. Her bed, when police later arrived, looked slept in, so she had been home. She had gone to sleep. And then, sometime in the early hours of that Sunday morning, something happened. Something that no one in that neighborhood saw or heard. The next afternoon, friends of Stacy and Susie began to worry. The girls hadn't shown up for the trip to Branson. They weren't answering the phone. Nobody had heard from them. That wasn't like them, not on a day they had been planning and looking forward to. So a group of friends drove to the house on East Delmar Street to check on them. What they found was unsettling in a way that was hard to name. The front door was wide open. The family dog, Cinnamon, was inside, wandering around, waiting. Every personal item belonging to all three women was still there. Their purses, their money, their driver's licenses, their medication, their car keys. Both of the girls' cars were still parked outside, and Cheryl's car was there too. Nobody had left, and yet nobody was there. The friends walked through the house. They didn't find anything obviously alarming, so they did what people do when something feels wrong, but you can't name it. They tried to make it right. They tied it up, they emptied ashtrays, they washed coffee cups. By the time police were called and officers arrived, somewhere between 10 and 20 people had already walked through the property. And this is something that will haunt investigators for decades. An unknown number of people, friends, neighbors, well-meaning strangers, had disturbed whatever evidence might have been there before anyone knew for certain that a crime had occurred. The crime scene had already been contaminated. Police began to reconstruct this scene, and two things stood out. First, the porch light was shattered. The glass was on the porch, not on the lawn, suggesting the bulb had been struck from the outside. Someone standing on that porch had destroyed the light, plunging the entryway into darkness. Second, one of the window blinds inside the house was bent at an odd angle, as if someone had peered through it from inside, or as if something had brushed against it in the dark hours of the morning. And that was it. That was all. No blood, no signs of a physical struggle, no forced entry, nothing overturned, nothing missing except the women themselves. The FBI joined the investigation 2 days after the disappearance. By the third day, more than 20,000 flyers had been posted across Springfield. Search parties fanned out across rural and suburban areas, the fields around the city, the banks of Lake Springfield, stretches of the James River. Divers went in, cadaver dogs were brought out. None of it led anywhere at all. In any investigation, you begin with the people closest to the victims, and in the early weeks of this case, investigators had a few names that kept coming up. One was Dustin Regla. He was a former boyfriend of Susie's, and he had recently been involved in something that defies its explanation. He and two friends had broken into a local mausoleum and stolen gold dental filings from a skull. Susie had reportedly given police a statement about that incident. Some investigators believed she might have been a witness against him in any resulting case. If so, a motive was possible. But Regla took a polygraph test in June of 1992 and passed it. He later testified before a grand jury and denied any involvement. He was never charged in connection with the disappearance. Another name that kept circling back was Robert Craig Cox. He was a complicated, troubling figure, a former Army Ranger with a violent history, a man who had once been convicted of murder in Florida before that conviction was overturned on appeal. By the time the women disappeared, he had come back to his childhood hometown of Springfield. He was there in 1992, and in 1996, sitting in a Texas prison cell, he told a reporter something nobody expected. He said he knew the three women were dead, not as a theory, not as a guess. He said it plainly, with certainty, as though it were a fact he had carried for years. He said their bodies would never be found. He didn't say he killed them. He didn't confess. He just knew. And then he stopped talking. His alibi for the night, that he was at home in bed, was initially supported by a girlfriend. She later recanted and said Cox had specifically asked her to say that. His parents also said he was with them. Police were never able to determine whether Cox was genuinely connected to the case or whether he was a deeply troubled man seeking a dark kind of recognition. He died while still incarcerated, and whatever he knew or claimed to know went with him. One more moment from this investigation deserves to be remembered. On the last night of December 1992, New Year's Eve, 6 months after the women disappeared, a man called the tip line for the television program America's Most Wanted. He said he had information about the Springfield Three. People monitoring the call said he seemed to have genuine specific knowledge of what had happened. Investigators were patched in to listen. And then the call dropped, disconnected, and the man never called back. Years passed. The case went cold. The families kept pushing for answers, and the city of Springfield never entirely forgot the 3 women whose photographs still hung in local storefronts. And then in 2007, something new emerged. Not from law enforcement, but from an anonymous tip called in to a local crime reporter. The tip claimed the 3 women's bodies were buried beneath the concrete foundation of a hospital parking structure, specifically the south parking garage at Cox South Hospital, right there in Springfield. The reporter hired a mechanical engineer to conduct a ground-penetrating radar scan across a section of the garage floor. The engineer found 3 anomalies beneath the surface. 3 shapes, roughly similar in size, consistent, he said, with what a burial site might produce on radar. 2 of them ran parallel to each other. The 3rd was positioned perpendicular. Police reviewed the findings. They declined to excavate. They said there wasn't sufficient evidence to justify tearing up an active hospital parking structure based on what they had. And they noted that the original tip had come from someone who described either a psychic vision or a dream. Some of the families disagreed with that decision, and some of them still do. The garage was eventually demolished during a later hospital renovation, but no search of the subsurface was conducted before the demolition. So whatever those 3 anomalies were, whatever lies beneath the concrete that was poured there and torn up and gone, will in all likelihood never be known. Cheryl Levitt and Zuzi Streeter were declared legally dead in 1997, despite the fact that their bodies have never been recovered. Stacy McCall remains listed officially as a missing person. The Springfield Police Department still accepts tips related to the case. Stacy's mother, Janice, has spent more than 3 decades attending vigils, giving interviews, and waiting. She has said that on the night it happened, she expected Stacy home in the morning, maybe the day after. She never imagined she'd still be waiting 30 years later. 3 women disappeared in a window of roughly 5 hours from a house on a quiet street without a sound. The dog didn't bark. The neighbors didn't wake. No one saw a car leave. No one heard a door close. And in the morning, the only living soul left in that house was a little dog named Cinnamon, who knew exactly what had happened and could never say. The Springfield 3 still out there somewhere, waiting to be found, or waiting for someone after 33 years to finally say what they know. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the crime coroner. Much love and bliss.